It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
All right, you want to answer an investments question?
Well, I know you get excited about
Yeah,
this.
that's why. Let's be honest.
So
because I'm in
you know
control.
what?
That's
Read the question. I don't even mind if you go first
right,
since
I'll
you're the
start.
CFA here.
This is from Scott. Scott says, what's your advice on investing in international stocks, both in terms of allocation and location? I've avoided allocating as highly as some of the target date funds, but valuations seem relatively cheap. And we get this question a lot. Like, how do I think about looking at domestic equity allocations versus international equity allocations? Well, first, I think you got to step back and look at the big picture. There are reasons to be excited about international investing. I mean, when you look at the rising middle class and other parts of the world and how technology is expanding and how the world is becoming a much smaller place and even how much revenue is derived from domestic companies, from international consumers, there's a lot of compelling reasons that you should be diversified internationally. Here's the truth of the matter, though, and this is a unique thing for two folks who help people design portfolios on a day-to-day basis. We don't know what the market's going to do. Yeah. We don't know what it's going to do over the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And specifically, we don't know what individual asset classes are going to do. And whenever we don't know something for sure, rather than taking the risk of being 100% wrong, we kind of like to stack the deck in probability so that we can be sort of mostly right or mostly wrong, but we're never going to be on either 100% either side. So we like to have a healthy international allocation. Now, you could be someone who says, man, I think that the international wave is going to be the future, so I'm going to hold 80% of my portfolio international. And you may be exactly right that was a great place to be, but your timing could be off. You could say that, and international equities might not rise to true valuation, rise to realistic valuations for 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 years. So when you design your portfolio, before you can make the assessment of how much should I have in each, you got to look at your own personal situation. When do I need this money? What are the availability of accounts that I have? What are the availability of holdings that I have? Then you have to make a personal assessment on that. You know, he had mentioned that the target date funds have a lot of heavy international exposure. Well, a really easy thing to do is go look at what the target date funds are actually buying, go look at the underlying holdings, and kind of get a spreadsheet and do a little analysis yourself to see, okay, how is that international exposure being utilized and what are they doing? And how does that shift from a 2040 fund to a 2030 fund? Because you can glean some insight from that. I mean, it's not going to be perfect for your situation, but it will at least give you an idea of how to think about going about making that decision.
I think that is all perfect. I would also just throw in there the big picture because it ties into what you're saying is what's your why with the money. And then a good defense is definitely being proactive with the design of the portfolio on the front end. That's why I like, you have to kind of know what is your grounding philosophy towards investing. Mm-hmm. And I think there's nothing wrong with having a hub and spoke approach to investing or core satellite type approach.
Love it.
But you need to kind of know your why, know what you're trying to build for, and then that way, and know the context so that you can do it appropriately. And then that way you don't get pulled into chasing the hot dot or freaking out when the markets go down and we have volatility. I think that's why I try to tell people keep it simple with the index target retirement funds. Once you reach a critical mass, that complexity is going to come to you naturally, and you're going to realize you have enough assets there that you don't want to screw it up. And that's when I just know the game's rigged in a way that you're going to probably want a co-pilot.
Yep.
And look, that's the beauty of we've been doing this long enough that we can find out a person's age, what their risk profile, when they want to retire, and we can kind of try to help them navigate the complexity of what does that asset allocation look like.
Love it, love it, love it. Great question. It's awesome that you're thinking about these things. And I'm going to throw one other thing. Make sure you understand your individual risk tolerance and risk capacity, because not all international investments are created equal. Some developed markets behave very different than emerging markets. So understanding the difference and where you want to be allocated matters. There is one United States, one domestic thing that you have to look at. International, there's a bunch of countries, there's a bunch of different sectors, a bunch of different regions. So understand exactly what you're doing there. That's a great question.